Hey guys, so today I have a crazy story that I almost can't even believe myself. Politicians in one US state are calling to end EV sales by 2035. Yeah, completely banning them altogether. So I have seen a lot of crazy things over the years covering EVs. It just kind of has me like scratching my head. What is going on? What exactly is happening over in Wyoming? Let's get into it. So we have to admit that different parts of the country definitely have different feelings when it comes to EVs, but I think most trends do start on the West Coast, specifically California. It starts out as this thing where people make fun of it, but then eventually everybody adopts. So we see this with music, we see this with fashion, and we see this with what's known as gig economy companies. Those are things like DoorDash, Uber Eats, Airbnb, just to name a few. So check this out. In 2014, the gig economy was worth over $14 billion, and now just a few years later, it's worth over $300 billion. So 1 in 3 Americans are actually involved in some kind of gig economy, and chances are you guys have already interacted with one of them today. There's over 1 million DoorDashers, and Uber has another 1 million drivers. So Silicon Valley tries these disruptive trends, then the East Coast tries them out, and if they do well, eventually Middle America tries them out. So we have seen this with Tesla and pretty much all EVs. You'll notice in this chart from 2019, California and DC are clear winners as percentage of market share, but states from Middle America are nowhere to be found. And now we're learning that some of those states are actively fighting all EV adoption and want to ban them entirely by 2035. So Wyoming's Republican legislators are bringing the EV debate into politics and want nothing to do with electric cars on their roads. I wonder why. And speaking of jumping hurdles, if you are a stock investor, especially in all things EVs over this past year, then you've seen the volatility firsthand. I mean, stocks and bonds were down, gold was stagnant, and even crypto fell off a cliff. But there's one asset class that's not only used as an inflation hedge, but also doesn't have any correlation to the market. So thanks to Masterworks for sponsoring this part of the video. So the art market has historically only been available to the 0.1%ers, but Masterworks has a platform that lets you invest in art. It's pretty simple. They buy an expensive art piece, break it into affordable shares, and list them on their platform. This isn't crypto or an NFT, it's actually fine art from guys like Picasso and Banksy. So it's actually one of the best ways that I diversify my portfolio to maximize my returns. When almost everything else was down last year, they returned tens of millions to their investors. The demand has been so high that there's typically a wait list to join, but they're allowing Kim Java viewers to open a free, no obligation account right now with the link in the description down below. So check out Masterworks and let's get back to the video. So if we look at the action governments are taking on the state level, this map clearly shows the states taking the most utility action for EVs, and the darkest colors are for states on the West Coast and the Northeast. So we've talked about this before, but other states have been punishing EV owners with massive fees since 2019. Yes, we are looking at you, Missouri and Illinois. So back in 2019, Missouri proposed to increase fees for EV drivers because, they don't have to pay the gas tax fees for roads, but they made it 3 times higher than it is for gas car drivers. Then Illinois doubled down, wanting to charge EV owners a $1,000 yearly fee, which was eventually reduced down to $250, but that still seems pretty high. It could be that they hate EVs altogether, but odds are they are being lobbied by oil and gas companies who want to protect their ICE car sales. In the past, some politicians have argued that it's not fair for ICE car drivers to pay for all the infrastructure coming out of their gas taxes, but that can easily be resolved by taxes on registration for EV owners or adding a tax to charging, not just banning EVs altogether. You guys probably realize we don't delve too much into politics on this channel, but I don't think that this should even be a political issue at all because they're Republicans, they're Democrats, and they both drive EVs. Politicians can argue over climate change and they can argue over fossil fuels all they want, but I just think that people should have a choice in their state if they want to be able to drive an EV, and that should be up to them and not politics. After all, EV prices are continuing to fall as battery tech improves and more competitors are electrifying their fleet. Actually, EVs are already cheaper to own than some ICE cars if we consider savings from gas, maintenance, insurance, and resale value. Now, just to be fair, I'm told this bill will not ban every EV from getting on the road. It's more of a proposed bill that, if adopted, it will stop new EV sales starting in 2035. This is more what they call political messaging, trying to say that EVs just don't work in their state. But it does sound like they're just trying to appease the oil industry to me. So here we have to look at the big picture, which is mainstream adoption of EVs. So when Tesla first came out with the Roadster, it was a rich person's second car, or maybe even their third car. It was fun, and some people even called it a gimmick. Elon believed that there was a market for EVs, and if people were given the option to own one, and if Tesla could make them affordable, you would reach a point where it would be appealing for the masses, and this would be in line with his goal to transition the world to sustainable transport. So we've all heard Elon's plans, where he started with a small sports car for the elites, and then eventually plans to produce a cheaper, more affordable option for the masses. He started with the S and the X, and then eventually made the 3 and the Y. So of course Elon ended up being right, as in people wanted EVs, and a lot of people share his passion to solve the sustainable transport issue as a way to battle climate change. So all this kind of forced the OEMs to start making EVs as well, but still EVs are not accessible to the masses. And this is really why the whole Wyoming bill is just so important, because it kind of speaks to the challenges that get in the way of EV adoption. I think the obvious challenge for widespread EV adoption, of course, has to be the price. You know, EVs have to come out with compelling features at that $30,000 to $35,000 price mark. So we're starting to see all of this, especially with some EVs that are right above 40 grand. And when you add in the US tax incentives, you really start to get close to that number with some really great EVs that are coming out. So there's also this metric that says that every time that you drop the price of a car by 5 grand, you actually double the number of buyers. And it's kind of crazy to think about when you look at all the price drops that Tesla's just had. So the second challenge is charging. You guys wouldn't believe how many people message me about charging, the reliability of it, and also how much time they might have to commit to it, and just the fear involved around being able to count on it. So to get to mass adoption, the average charge time really needs to be at 15 minutes or less. The third challenge is, of course, range and the notion of range anxiety. But I've learned the hardest thing for me to convey to people who are hesitant to buy an EV is the whole mindset and how it's different when you own an EV. Especially if you have a garage, you're fueling up your daily miles every night. You're rarely getting below 70 or 80%, and when you do, it's on road trips, and it's only after you've driven 3 or 4 hours and you actually need that break. So recent studies show that the tipping point for range in EVs is about 350 miles, but the prices need to drop from where they've been for high range EVs to compete with your Toyota Camrys of the world, and most ICE cars have a range of 300 to 500 miles, and a lot of Teslas have a range of over 300 miles, but that $30,000 to $40,000 price point is still not here for the higher range EVs. Okay, so basically we need EVs to be below 35,000, have at least 350 miles of range and a good charging network, and then we'll likely have widespread adoption. And you know what? There are some EVs and Teslas that are closer to that number than you actually might think. But honestly, any of these challenges can be offset really fast with government support, whether it's federal, state, or local support. I mean, look at China. Since the government helped push for EVs, they are now the biggest EV market. People will always vote with their dollar, and what they buy proves demand, and then manufacturers will build products to fill those demands. But the government can accelerate or slow this adoption with the laws they pass or the behaviors they incentivize on both the consumer side and the business side. So back to Wyoming and Missouri, it's hard to understand why they would stand in the way. So right now, California has the lead, but I think the near-term goal would be for states to have at least 50% of their cars electrified. So remember how fast it took for phones to switch to being smartphones? smartphones, it was actually about 10 years. But this is because most people change their phones every 2 to 3 years, and cars are changed every 8 to 10 years. So I'm expecting that this will be more than 10 years, maybe around 25 to 30 years, but hopefully sooner than later. All right, guys, if you're watching this far, hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Please make sure you give it a like and you're subscribed to our channel. Videos like this one do take a lot of time and effort by myself and my whole team to put together. Also, you can check out our website if you want to support us. We have all kinds of EV and Tesla inspired merch on there. So go check it out. It's kimjava.com. And thank you guys so much for watching. We'll catch you next time.